What if I told you that over 900 years ago, a man didn't just observe the world, he foresaw where it was heading. He predicted that economies, when driven by greed instead of principle, would eventually collapse. That money, once tied to effort and purpose, would dissolve into illusion, a shadow of value. That entire civilizations could crumble, not from lack of wealth, but from worshipping it. And this man wasn't an economist, nor a politician, not a banker or a king. He was a mystic, a teacher, a seeker, a philosopher who walked away from everything to find the truth. His name was Al-Ghazali, a Persian thinker who dared to link money to morality. In a time ruled by merchants and monarchs, in an era when gold dictated power and silk routes shaped empires, he made a radical claim. The love of money is a disease of the heart, not just inconvenient, not just problematic, a disease. He believed economics without ethics would always lead to decay. He believed that to understand wealth, we must first understand why we seek it. And most dangerously of all, he believed that the systems we build can destroy us from within. Al-Ghazali was born in 1058 in the Persian city of Tus, a world away from the smartphones and stock tickers of today. It was a time of expansion, trade routes flourishing, Islamic scholarship at its peak, and wealth flowing like never before. The Silk Road connected east and west. Baghdad was the intellectual capital of the world. Libraries held thousands of manuscripts. Mathematicians invented algebra. Astronomers mapped the heavens. And money was everywhere. Caravans carried spices, textiles, precious metals. Contracts were signed. Fortunes were made. The markets hummed with ambition. From a young age, his mind burned with questions, not just about law or theology, but about meaning, about justice, about truth. Why do some prosper while others starve? Why does wealth concentrate in the hands of a few? What separates fair trade from exploitation? He studied Islamic law, philosophy, logic, Greek thought. He debated scholars twice his age. He questioned everything. By his 30s, he had reached the intellectual pinnacle, appointed to the Nizamiya, the most prestigious academy in Baghdad. Imagine, thousands of students, packed lecture halls, leaders seeking his counsel, his name echoing from Persia to Cairo to Cordoba. He was the most famous scholar in the Islamic world, influential, respected, powerful, and yet he walked away. At the height of his career, something broke inside him, not his mind, his certainty. He was haunted by doubt, by a crisis of purpose, by the realization that knowledge without soul is dangerous. He could recite 1,000 texts, he could win any argument, he could command any audience, but he didn't know if any of it was true. So in 1095, he left Baghdad, left fame, left security. He disappeared for years, traveled, reflected, wandered through Damascus, Jerusalem, Mecca, and in solitude, away from applause and expectations, he wrote. The revival of the religious sciences became his life's work. 40 volumes, a masterpiece that would influence Islamic thought for centuries. Philosophy, law, spirituality, and yes, finance. Because Al-Ghazali understood something most people miss. How we handle money reveals who we are. He didn't just ask, what is money? He asked, what does money do to us? What does it make us believe? What does it make us willing to do? In the 11th century, long before Wall Street, before central banks, before credit cards and cryptocurrency, Al-Ghazali saw the patterns. He watched merchants manipulate prices during shortages. He saw lenders exploit the desperate. He observed how wealth became a weapon, a tool of control rather than exchange. And he began to write about money, not as an object, but as a relationship between people, between effort and reward, between need and provision. Al-Ghazali believed money could be sacred, but only when used with discipline. He wrote, "Gold and silver are created to be a measure and a standard. They are not intended in themselves." Think about that. Money isn't the goal, it's the tool. Like a ruler measures distance, money measures value. But you don't worship the ruler, you use it and move on. He warned that wealth, when accumulated without purpose, becomes poison, a burden that blinds judgment and breeds injustice. He told the story of a man who spent his entire life hoarding gold, barely eating, never giving, never enjoying. And when he died, the gold was divided among strangers who'd never known his name. All that sacrifice, all that denial, for what? Whoever is possessed by wealth becomes its servant, not its master, its servant. You think you own it, but it owns you. It dictates your choices, your relationships, your peace of mind. Al-Ghazali's economic philosophy was built on 3 pillars. Justice. He saw interest, usury, riba, as fundamentally unjust. not just forbidden, but economically destructive. Why? Because it profits from the desperation of the poor. It creates imbalance, not abundance. When you lend money at interest, you're saying, "Your crisis is my opportunity." The borrower gets poorer, the lender gets richer, and the gap widens until something breaks. He wrote against speculation, against manipulation, against the hoarding of resources that should have uplifted society. He believed in commerce based on consent, pricing based on fairness, not exploitation, and earnings based on effort, not deception. Circulation. Money, he argued, must flow, like water, like blood. When it stagnates, hoarded in vaults, hidden in offshore accounts, it becomes toxic. A healthy economy is one where money moves, from buyer to seller, from employer to worker, from those who have to those who need. Charity wasn't optional generosity, it was economic necessity. Purpose. This is where Al-Ghazali gets radical. He didn't just say, "Make ethical money." He said, "Know why you want it. Is it security? Fair enough. Is it comfort? Reasonable. Is it to help others? Noble. But if it's ego, if it's comparison, if it's the endless hunger for more, then money becomes your master, and you will never be free." To him, an ethical economy was not idealism, it was sustainability. You can't build a civilization on greed. It collapses under its own weight. And he predicted what we now know all too well. When morality exits the marketplace, collapse enters. 9 centuries later, Al-Ghazali's ideas feel prophetic. Today, global debt is over $300 trillion, more money than exists, more than can ever be repaid. Nations borrow to pay interest on previous loans. People work 2 jobs and still can't afford rent. Cryptocurrencies promise freedom, but hide volatility. Fortunes appear and vanish overnight. Stock markets soar, while wages stagnate, while homelessness rises, while millions wonder if they'll ever own a home. We have more wealth than any generation in history, and more anxiety. Because somewhere along the way, we forgot the question, what's the point? Is wealth just a game, a scoreboard, a survival tactic? Or could it be something else? Al-Ghazali believed wealth must circulate, not stagnate. That a society's greatness is measured not by its billionaires, but by how it treats its most vulnerable. He would look at today's world and ask, why do we celebrate individuals hoarding billions while others lack clean water? Why do we admire those who accumulate endlessly while the planet burns? Why have we built systems that reward extraction over contribution? He believed that a healthy economy is built not just on capital, but on character, that trust is the foundation of every market. And when trust is lost, even the richest nations fall. Think of 2008, the financial crisis. Banks gambling with other people's money. Mortgages bundled and sold like lottery tickets. And when it all collapsed, who paid? Not the architects of the disaster, the people, the workers, the families who lost homes, savings, futures. Al-Ghazali saw this pattern 1,000 years ago. When those in power betray the trust of the people, the system devours itself. And that justice must sit at the center of every transaction, not as decoration, not as a side note, as the foundation. Because economics isn't separate from ethics. It never was. Every price is a moral choice. Every salary, every contract, every investment. We pretend these are neutral, technical, just business. But Al-Ghazali knew better. The marketplace is a mirror. It reflects the soul of a society. So what would he say to us now? In an age of algorithms and automation, of influencers and index funds, what would this 11th century mystic tell us about money? Maybe he'd say, stop worshiping numbers on a screen. Stop measuring your worth by your net worth. Stop believing that more will finally be enough. He'd remind us that money is a tool, not a god. That wealth without purpose is just weight. That we're building economies on sand when we could be building on stone. He'd ask us to imagine a different system. One where profit doesn't require exploitation. Where success doesn't demand someone else's failure. Where the goal isn't infinite growth, but sustainable flourishing. Because infinite growth on a finite planet is a fantasy, and fantasies eventually end. Al-Ghazali didn't ask how money works. He asked how it should work. And maybe, in a world flooded with data, but starved of meaning, we need that question more than ever. What if value wasn't just currency? What if prosperity meant purpose? What if we measured an economy not by GDP, but by well-being? What if we designed systems that served humanity instead of demanding humanity serve them? And what if money had a moral code? 900 years ago, a man walked away from fame and fortune to find the truth. He found it, not in gold, not in power, not in certainty, but in questions. Questions we're still afraid to ask. Questions that might just save us if we're brave enough to listen.